So it wasn't too long ago that Tekken 8 announced its second DLC character, Lydia. And while I have no problems with Lydia being the next DLC character, my reaction from the announcement of Lydia and the one before her from Eddie were completely different. And it mainly stems from the fact that I know Eddie. Eddie was introduced in Tekken 3 and I've been playing Tekken my entire life, so I know who Eddie is. With Lydia, we were introduced to Lydia at the end of the life cycle of Tekken 7, so I barely know her if I know who she is at all. And it got me thinking on who fighting games should have as DLC. Should they just bring back returning characters, or should they introduce new original characters as DLC? So I just wanted to come on here really quick and share my opinions on this, and if you have an opinion, put it down in the comments. I'd love to read them. Now, if you ask me, I believe that DLC characters should consist of both returning characters and crossovers instead of introducing new original characters. Reason being is that being DLC characters, we have to pay for them. There's an extra charge for those characters, so I would rather spend my money on characters I already know of than characters I'm just being introduced to. And there are people that believe that once a fighting game introduces a character to that game, that they should just be a part of the game moving forward on release. And I hear you, that is a valid criticism. But here is the main problem I see with that. If every fighting game kept every character they have ever introduced, let's take Tekken 8 as an example. Its roster on launch consisted of 32 characters. If they kept every playable character that has ever been introduced in Tekken, they would have about 60 characters. Now, for people who are familiar with Tekken like myself, that doesn't sound too intimidating because we already know what characters we like, we know how we play already. But for people who are picking it up for the first time and seeing a roster of almost 60 characters, that has to be intimidating because they're thinking of who to try and who to pick, and now they have to try almost 60 characters to find the one that resonates with them. And plus, it isn't unheard of for characters from one installment to not make it to the next installment. It's actually more normal than you think. Just an example I can think of off the top of my head is Bruce Irvin. He was introduced in Tekken 2, he didn't make the jump to Tekken 3, wasn't in Tekken 4, he was in Tekken 5, he was in Tekken 6 because just about everybody was in Tekken 6, but we haven't seen him since. He wasn't in Tekken 7 at all, and he wasn't part of Tekken 8's base roster, and I'm saying this while we still have 2 characters as DLC, so there's a chance he might come back, but it hasn't happened yet. And Tekken's not the only one to have forgotten characters either. Crimson Viper was introduced in Street Fighter 4 and she hasn't been seen since either. She wasn't in Street Fighter 5 and as of this recording she hasn't been seen in Street Fighter 6. Mortal Kombat also has a list of forgotten characters, but with Mortal Kombat 1's cameo system, they seem to find a way to work around it. That's why they can have characters like Stryker and Frost in the game, but without having them be playable fighters. So what that point comes down to is that it's easier for somebody who is new to said game to digest a smaller roster of characters than a larger one that consists of every character that's ever been introduced. My next point being, look how people reacted when they found out Eddie was the first character to be DLC in Tekken 8. People were hyped, people were excited because they know who Eddie is, and being a DLC character, although temporarily, puts the spotlight on him. As it does for every character that is DLC, it puts the spotlight on them temporarily until the next one. Look at Akuma. Akuma was just announced as the next DLC character for Street Fighter 6, so the spotlight is gonna be on Akuma until the next DLC fighter. And the same goes for Lydia when she drops in Tekken 8. The spotlight is going to be off of Eddie and it's going to be on Lydia. For the next while after she drops, people are going to be wondering how she fits in with Tekken 8's new system, how to play as her, how to play against her, and so on and so on. Actually, now that Lydia was brought up, it's a good time to transition into this. Lydia was introduced in Tekken 7 as DLC. In fact, if my memory is correct, I think she was the last character to be introduced as DLC in Tekken 7. The problem is, I did not care because since Lydia was new, I didn't know who she was, so I didn't know why I should care other than she's the shiny new toy. And it's not like it was an abundant problem in Tekken 7 with having new characters. I think out of every character that came out as DLC, only 3 were completely new and original. It's just that, I didn't know who those characters were, so it's a harder sell for me to spend my money on them when I don't know who they are, how they play, etc, etc. It's a harder sell to get me to spend my money on a completely new character than it would be for a returning character. And I want to say that Namco, as well as Capcom and NetherRealm Studios, understand this because Namco and Capcom release mostly returning characters as DLC, while NetherRealm just has never released new characters as DLC ever. The only argument I can see is Scarlet, but even that is not entirely new, as Scarlet was based off of an old glitch back in the day. And I've said it before in my personal circle of friends that no fighting game does DLC like Mortal Kombat. Not only do they bring in characters that everybody knows, but they also bring in characters that are very popular in mainstream media. In Mortal Kombat 9, they brought in Freddy Krueger. In Mortal Kombat 10, they brought in Alien and Predator. In Mortal Kombat 11, they brought in RoboCop, Terminator, Rambo, and Spawn. And now in Mortal Kombat 1, they have Peacemaker, Omni-Man, and Homelander. But seriously, if you need any proof that crossover characters work, go look at any reaction to any reveal in Super Smash Bros. The hype during that period has always been unreal because they have always been characters that people know. Whether it was Joker from Persona 5, Banjo-Kazooie, Sephiroth, or Sora, people flip out when they see characters that they know are introduced somewhere else. And again, if I'm gonna have to pay a few extra dollars for it, you're gonna have to make it worth it. Well, that about wraps up my opinions on this topic. If you have opinions of your own, please put them down in the comments. Again, I'd love to read them and I'd love to have a conversation about it. Well, until next time, I'll see you guys later.
Thank you for listening.